Aloha, everyone. I'm Rafael at the Center on Disability Studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And we are conducting an oral history of the Hawaii School for the Deaf and Blind. And I am very grateful today to be speaking with Linda Lambrecht. And our ASL interpretation today is provided by Erica Perry. And I am located today on the campus of the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And I believe, Linda, you are also in Honolulu today. Is that correct?
I was in the past, but now I actually live in Kaneohe, and that's currently where I am.
You're in Kaneohe. Terrific.
Yes.
So, Linda, I wanted to thank you again. And I wanted to just begin, if you can start by just saying what your connection and relationship with the Hawaii School for Deaf and Blind has been and is.
Yes, hi, I'm Linda Lambrecht. So I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I started at the deaf school at 5, and I was there until I graduated. Oh, okay. Let me the mute. So I do have a lot of experience with the deaf school. I was the baby of the family. I have 2 deaf siblings that told me their stories and prepared me for going to school. So I've had a connection to HSDB for a long time, and it has changed a lot over the years.
So just starting out, what are some of your, since you began at 5, what are some of your earliest memories of the school and the grounds of the school? What are some of your earliest memories?
Oh, wow. Gosh. I remember my 2 brothers that were deaf. So, and then they were so excited because they had a baby sister. And so they started teaching me probably about 1. They started doing a lot of sign language, teaching me my name. So my brothers knew sign language, Hawaii Sign Language, and then American Sign Language. So they used both with me. So with Hawaii Sign Language, some of the signs are more 2-handed rather than 1-handed. But so they started teaching me my name and all these things. So when I got to school, I remember I was wearing a dress, and the teacher came up to me and said, "Hi." And they told me their name. And then I said, "Oh, this is my name." They said, "Oh, you're so smart." I thought, why? I don't understand why you think I'm so smart. But all of the other deaf students in the school didn't know sign language yet. They were very oral. I was the only one that knew sign language at that time. And I just couldn't understand why they thought I was so smart. But it is very common that if there are deaf children born to deaf parents, deaf family members, sign language is passed along, but deaf children born to hearing parents, they don't typically learn sign language until they enter school. So really, those students are not any less intelligent. They just haven't had the exposure yet. But I just remember them thinking I was so smart. And so my brothers, they would tell me all about their friends and the history and things. They told me going back to like the 1930s, telling all these stories. And it's really sad, some of the things that have happened compared to today. So as you continue to ask me questions, I will share more of the history.
Terrific. So, do you remember any of the things that you saw at the school when you were first there? Some of just the grounds itself? Do you remember any of the things that stuck out to you as a kid when you first came to the school?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes. So when I went into the campus on my very first day into the class, you know, and I was signing, and the teacher slapped my hand and they said, "You're not allowed to sign." And that was like the 30s through the 60s. Sign language was not permitted. They were oral. They really emphasized talking. So they would smack my hand. I thought, what? I thought all deaf people were allowed to sign, but the other students were signing. So we had to sit and we had to use these earphones. And so I thought when I grew up, I would turn hearing because, you know, I saw other people talking. And so my brothers were deaf and signing, and they had 2 languages. So when I went into school, everybody else couldn't sign. And so they want us to do oral, and they gave us these headsets. And some people were using FM systems. I thought, I don't know what that is. And the teacher said, that means you can hear, you need to use hearing aids. So back in the day, they were more like old-fashioned hearing aids. They were more these wires with this box. And so they would practice with me saying, "You're deaf, you're deaf, you're deaf." And so I didn't quite understand, but they would turn up the volume and they would be so loud and they would say, "See, you can hear." And so, but I did, hold on just one second. The interpreter is going to clarify. So when I started in the school, they are the ones that told me I was deaf. And that's what they told me. I was deaf. So that got drilled into my head.
So what were some of the daily routines that you remember at school when you were a child? The routines of things that you would do each day in the classroom or in the school grounds. Do you remember any routines?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So from kindergarten to probably, yeah, before high school, we were not allowed to sign. That was really what it was. And so deaf people didn't really have a strong understanding of sign language in a lot of ways. So, and my brothers would teach me about math, and so I would watch them in sign language. I didn't really understand it initially in English. I didn't understand. And you know, a lot of students with all those English symbols and trying to explain it to them was challenging. So they didn't want lots of people to help in sign language, but I was able to help some students. And so I could spell really well. I could read finger spelling really well. A lot of students couldn't read the finger spelling very well. And then in high school, there was one teacher that was deaf, and I thought, oh my gosh, he's deaf. So I went into the class and I started signing, and the teacher said, no signing, you have to talk. And hold on one second. So no, the other teachers in school told me that you have to talk, no signing, but I wanted to go into his class because he was deaf, and I wanted to get to high school so fast so that I could do sign language. And I thought, looking back, I think all of these students were forced to grow up with an oral education, and that really was a negative impact on them. It had a negative impact on their reading and their English. But people did not think that sign language was equal to English, and they would say, you cannot sign, it is wrong, speaking is better, sign language is inferior. And at Gallaudet University, they teach that they are equal languages. And when I was there, I thought, oh my gosh, that's such a wonderful approach to build on the English language from sign language rather than deprive children of language.
And when were you at Gallaudet?
Oh, after I graduated high school, I did go to Gallaudet. 1963 is when I went.
And so when we're talking about your time coming in at 5 and being there through high school and being told you can't sign, we're talking basically in the 50s, right?
Hold on just a moment. Well, they were oral starting from 1914,
Yeah.
even before I got there.
But for
So
you,
in the 60s and 70s, they had deaf teachers that were starting to, work there, and they're starting to be more forgiving of the sign language and accepting that that was a way of communication.
and for you though, you were there, what decade did you start in the school? Just so that I have a time frame. When did you start at the school roughly? Just roughly, just generally.
1950.
Yeah. So thinking about the school, and I know you've said that it's changed a lot, but thinking about the physical layout of the school, were there any places or special spots that were especially important to you as a student at the school? Any physical places that were important to you?
Okay, well, okay. Really, the school has stayed the same square shape with the center yard for kids to play in. They play volleyball. They had all kinds of different games. And the buildings were very old. They are concrete, but it is very much the same. The classrooms have moved around there, but everything really has stayed the same. And before, there were military somebody told me that they had like military housing right in that area. Yeah, like a military campus. Before the school started, that campus was a military campus. And so then it got transitioned into the school for the deaf.
Now, for you as a kid, were there special places to you of the campus that were important to you?
Oh gosh, really? Well, Brian, gosh, when you interviewed him, I'm not sure what he would say, but hold on one second. So they across the way from the school, there is the fire department. And so there's also that little park. And so we like to try to go play over there. But I really wanted to stay on the campus, but I wasn't allowed to because my parents were in town. So I didn't get to stay in the dorms. But back then we were allowed to go to the beach, and that was really fun. I like to get dropped off at the beach.
And the center part, I know the center part of the campus used to be the administration building, and then it became the play space. When you were a student, was the center a place where people would play? The kids would come together and play? The center of the campus? The grassy area?
So it was all the same, the whole 12 years I was there. And then after I graduated, they did move some buildings around. They separated the boys and the girls' dorms originally, and now they're like the same building, but or the same area, but slightly separate buildings. And let me re-ask your question.
Okay.
So they did have the center grass area back then, but now they've added gardens. So it's changed a little bit in their how they have it designed, that yard.
Now, when you were a kid, were there any unique parts of the school or the grounds that stood out to you? Any landmarks or special spots? Okay,
No, not really.
okay.
No.
So
I
I
mean,
understand.
like they have the library and like an auditorium in one place before. I remember that, but now they've turned like the cafeteria into more of an auditorium. So they have the library separate, but well, I do remember. So we had our classes, and then in the back, they had like a small play area for the older kids to go play, and we go talk and have a great time out there. So it was behind the school. So I do remember that for 4 years before I graduated, I got to hang out back there with all the older kids.
I got it. And you said that the school has changed in a lot of ways. Are there any other ways that the school has changed that you want to mention?
I remember there was no ramp for wheelchairs back in the day, and then there was no elevator. But now it's required by law to have, accessibility. So they have elevators and ramps. But in my time, it wasn't really safe for various disabilities.
So do you remember when you were a kid, were there other students who were in wheelchairs?
No. It I do know that if you went into the auditorium, that you could use a wheelchair, I believe. We did later have one kid that joined in a wheelchair, and then we also had a or a blind student that was there. We do have some deaf blind there currently, but back then there was also a blind student, which currently there are none.
So thinking about the impact of the school on the rest of Honolulu and the rest of Hawaii, I'm just wondering what you think is the impact of the school on the deaf community of Hawaii. Has there been an impact by the school being here on other deaf people in Hawaii?
Oh,
So just in
wow.
general, it's the impact on.
I mean, it's so different today. So there's no blame for the DOE. I don't want to lay any blame, but for the program and the curriculum, there is an approach that the deaf education is the same as the regular public education, but it is not. It's so crucial that students have communication access, and their communication is very different. Their cultures are very different. So we are very welcoming to visitors that come to our school from Europe, from Asia. It's so wonderful for them to come and see the deaf school and see what it's like. And before it used to be open, but now it's not open. They have to call, make an appointment, and that's very unfortunate. And they're very strict, which I understand. There's a lot of crime and there's some dangerous people out there that want to maybe snatch children. But really, it used to be a very open campus and now it's very protected, which I do understand. I do get concerned that the DOE does not understand deaf culture and deaf curriculum, that it is very different, and that the communication access is very different than in the mainstream public schools. Hearing students, you know, it's very open. They get access to so many things auditorily, but with deaf people, you know, they need visual access to their culture. And so we had a program for May Day and they invited the deaf community for graduation. They invited the deaf community for our events. We involved the deaf community and it's very nice.
So the deaf community is brought into the school for different things, and you're talking about May Day, but it sounds like you think the DOE, though, could do much more to better address the needs of deaf students and making sure that deaf culture is honored and respected.
Yes, yes, I do. So it's almost like a PTA meeting. We need to have those with the deaf community, and we do have them. We talk about how can we improve them. We have had that in the past, but it has dwindled. And a lot of our students are from other islands and other Pacific islands, not just the neighbor islands. We have students from the Philippines, from Asia, and a lot of students that are migrating here to Hawaii are preferring more mainstream education, and they think the curriculum is the same, but it is not. The deaf school has such different ways of teaching culture and access, and it's 24/7 communication for these students rather than in the mainstream environment. These students are not getting 24/7 language access, and it's very sad because they're gonna lose that part.
So thinking about, we talked a little bit about Gallaudet, and some people have compared the Hawaii School for Deaf and Blind to Gallaudet, that in Hawaii, the Hawaii School for Deaf and Blind is kind of a hub for the deaf community. But I wanted to ask, what is uniquely Hawaiian about the school? What is uniquely Hawaiian about the Hawaiian School for Deaf and Blind? How is it uniquely connected to what it means to be part of Hawaii?
Oh, yes. Okay, sure. We have very different Hawaii events here. We have Lay Day, we have May Day, we have Kamehameha Day, different things that the students here engage in that they don't do on the mainland. And here at the Hawaii Deaf School, we learn that the language we use is from the French that went to the mainland that then got brought over here. And we talk about different famous people that are on the mainland, but we don't have some of those things happening here for like deaf famous people. So we are talking to our students about trying to catch up to that. And we are teaching them about Hawaiian history. So I am the president of the Alumni Association, and we have set up a Hall of Fame. So that way our deaf students here can know, oh, these are famous deaf people who have donated money, who are famous track stars, et cetera, et cetera. So I was in charge of the Hall of Fame, and we were in the works of that. And then it kind of has fallen through the cracks recently. We've lost momentum, which is unfortunate. And then, so comparing HSDB to the mainstream, mainstream education, the mainstream education really has a lot of opportunities that the deaf school doesn't seem to have right now. So we are trying to get our students to go to Gallaudet University to get those experiences, but we're sending them really one by one rather than in large groups. And we do have Voc Rehab that is trying to help students where they can enhance their math and reading skills at KCC, and then they can qualify to get into schools like CSUN or the Rochester Institute for the Deaf in New York or Gallaudet once they get their skills up to par to enter college.
So what do you see as the connection between Hawaiian culture and deaf culture? Hawaiian culture and deaf culture. What do you see? How do you see them connected to each other?
Are you talking about hearing or Hawaiian culture?
So deaf culture and Hawaiian culture.
Well, really, a lot of our students learn the culture that their parents teach them. However, we have the Pacific Alumni Association where we talk about the different hold on 1 second. So really, because we have so many various cultures amongst our deaf community from different countries and different areas, we've become a knitted community together with various different cultures. We have deaf culture, and then we had a lot of interactions with people, and that is part of Hawaii, where we're a melting pot of different cultures. And so we used to have a lot of events before COVID, but we had Deaf Starbucks, we had other gatherings. However, since COVID, we've really lost those opportunities to gather and build that community feeling.
What are some of those cultures that you're mentioning? What are some of the cultures of the within the community? What are some of those other cultures present?
Well, I feel like in the past we did have that. We had those connections with other cultures because we would get together. We would have Christmas parties, Halloween parties, gatherings. So we had those, but we don't anymore. I feel like we don't have them anymore.
I got you. And for the students, though, at the school, what are some of the other cultures that were represented inside of the school community? And you, as alumni president, what are some of the other cultures that you see represented within the student alumni?
Well, I really think we're very unique here because our deaf community, we have people from the Philippines and we go get involved in their events. And then we have people from the Japanese cultures and we get involved in their events. There's no like, oh, this is your thing, not my thing. We have in our deaf community a very great aloha spirit that welcomes people. And I remember when I was younger, the students that were the kids that were like 18 to 20, they would have these big gatherings, get together and hang out. And now those kind of things don't really happen. They're much more mainstream. And the community gets involved in smaller groups of things. They're less involved as a whole.
Mm.
So and I really do love that there's so many different cultures here in Hawaii. I'm very curious about what each culture, what they value. I want to learn about them. I wish I could bring an interpreter and talk to all of them.
So backing up for a minute, when we were talking about the school grounds, what things in the school do you think are helpful for building community? As far as the way that the school is built, are there parts of the school that are helpful for building community that have been part of kind of bringing people together? Does that make sense?
No. I mean, I remember looking back, I think I was maybe 8 or 9. I forget what it was called. Maybe deaf. It was like a deaf awareness kind of day, and they had a fair, and they don't do that anymore. But there's not really a lot of recognition of the deaf school anymore, I feel like. But we in the community are really, so we used to have Hawaii Deaf celebrations, and then people were getting frustrated because they were saying, oh, then you're pinning the deaf against the hearing. So we did sign language celebrations and festivities, and we included culture and language, and we used to do that regularly. However, that's come to an end. So we've been talking about how do we set up a Hawaii Sign Language festival event again.
So I'd like to talk to you more.
And still, we have the Deaf Santa, though. That has been around for so long. Gosh. So since 1995 to now, we have Deaf Santa at Pearl Ridge Shopping Center every year, and that has been a consistent part of our festivities.
Great. So I'm just thinking about the relationship of the school in Hawaii's history. What role do you think that the Hawaii School for Deaf and Blind has played in, if we think about all of Hawaii's history, what role do you think the school has played in the history of Hawaii?
I mean, it's just been really sad. For me, really, we didn't know a lot of history about Hawaii history. We would see pretty pictures, and I'd ask the teacher, what about this? What's this for? And the teachers would say, never mind, it's Hawaii history. I'm like, I didn't understand. I was 10 until 18. I still didn't understand anything about Hawaii history. And then we went to the library as a family, and I thought, oh my gosh, these books are on folklore and all kinds of Hawaii histories, and oh my gosh, I just thought these were great. I didn't even know that this was something that we could learn about. So I saw 3 different books about Maui and Maui theater, and I thought, oh my gosh, all this history. And it's very sad because my time growing up, I didn't even know about any of this. I didn't even know about King Kamehameha or the Queen's names. I had
Wow.
no idea.
Wow.
So at the school, I forget, what did I say? Deaf American Studies, Deaf Studies. That's what we did. So we would sit and we'd be like, what does that mean? Deaf Studies. So it was the history of ASL and all that history. And when I learned that, I thought, oh my gosh. So then I wanted to they asked someone to volunteer to research Hawaiian history. And as I did, I learned so much information. I gave a presentation. And so I talked about the queens, Queen Kapiolani and Queen Lili Ukalani. And so hold on one second. Those 2 queens went and visited Gallaudet University. I was so surprised. I showed the people pictures of that, and they're like,
Oh,
what?
wow.
And so, yep.
Queen Lili Ukalani visited Gallaudet.
Yes. Yes. It's a surprise, I know.
Oh my
I
God.
know. Yeah. I mean, our jaws were on the floor. So I gave a presentation and I mentioned that, and people were surprised. All these hearing people had no idea, but I found it through Gallaudet's history, and I was just shocked. I just couldn't believe it. Hold on one second. Bingham, priest Bingham, he met deaf Hawaiian people here in 1829. And I was like, what? Really? So he wrote a letter, then sent it on a boat to Gallaudet, not the university, but to Gallaudet himself. And he was a teacher at a church, and he had taught Bingham about becoming a priest before he came to Hawaii. So he wrote all these things. And he sent a letter. I mean, he had lots of other things that he wrote, but they got lost, but Gallaudet bought about 6,000 different letters of things that were saved from Bingham. And so he knew Gallaudet, and he was looking for deaf people in Hawaii. That's what he wanted to do. Him and his wife came, and they were, I'm not sure about the church name, but it's kind of near the library and City Mill over there. So there's a church. And so Bingham was there, and he told Gallaudet about the different sign language here. And so that letter exists. I'm not, people will tell me, you're lying. I say, no, I'm not lying. Look at this letter.
I would love to talk with you more about, I'd like to extend our conversation particularly about Hawaiian Sign Language, but so coming back to the school though, are there any traditions or customs in the school that are passed down?
I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but
go ahead.
That history, hold on. Hold on one second, the interpreter's waiting. So really that deaf history has not been passed down to our community. Our Hawaiian history, as far as our kings and all of those things, are passed down. And I would like to spread that knowledge and that education. I did give a workshop back in February, but unfortunately, that's just not enough.
I'd love to talk with you more about this, and maybe we can talk about creating an opportunity for you to speak and share with folks about this. I'm amazed to hear about these things myself. So, but I would love to continue that conversation with you.
Sure. Go ahead.
So are there any traditions or customs at the school that get passed down generation by generation to different students? Are there a certain kind of customs or things that are done that are passed down through the generations that you're aware of? No?
No.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I did, as alumni, we said we would love to do a beautification project for Earth Day and help clean up the campus and have, hearing people and deaf people come in and clean up the campus and put in benches and make that an annual thing. And then that has not come to fruition. But then
Mhm.
they did just this past year finally, or a few years ago, put that into uh real life and create this event where they have students that clean up campus and they learn about Earth Day, and that's been really great. And also American Sign Language Day at Sea Life Park. They just did that this past year. So they have staff that can sign. There's so many deaf people that go. They provide interpreters and they learn the different kinds of animals. And it's just wonderful. So I think those that those kind of events are great traditions to be starting. And then I think in the fall, in September, they're going to do a deaf event day at the zoo.
Mm.
Oh, well, there is one tradition that has two traditions. There's May Day and Christmas. Those traditions have been passed down through the years, but now we're hopefully adding Earth Day and ASL Day.
And in May Day, what are some of the things that are done in May Day? What things happened on campus on May Day?
Oh, well, I mean, it's very different now from before. Before they had, of course, each island had hula performances and different performances. As I watch it, they are now showing how to do weaving of hats and mats and surfing. Oh, and outrigger canoeing. How to learn the hula and the ipu and different things like that. They've been teaching that with the interpreters. There's one more. I forget what it was. Oh, food. How to make poi, how to pound poi. So that was really the best to see that. I was so excited. People were just fascinated with that event.
So I'd love to talk with you more separately about Hawaii Sign Language, but I just wanted to ask you now, when were you first introduced to Hawaii Sign Language?
Oh, I mean, gosh, it's a very long story, but really, I was 5. I learned HSL,
Hmm. From your
but I
brother?
didn't know that it was HSL.
That was from your brothers?
Yeah, so we had ASL and HSL, but I didn't know.
Hmm.
Yes, from my brothers. They taught me that. So, just a little bit of HSL. And then when I was in my 30s and 40s, I realized, oh, everybody, there's all these different sign languages across the world. And somebody told me, Linda, you know HSL. And I was like, what? No, I don't. And then they told me, yes, you do. I didn't even realize that I knew HSL. I thought, I was just ASL. That's what I thought. So I didn't realize it. And I remember my brother signed different, like the kapuna from back in the day to now, they sign very different. But then also there is home sign and all of these different variations in language. And at the deaf school, of course, sign language was forbidden originally. So I did not realize that I knew HSL and ASL. And then I started writing about it. And there's over 100 signs that I remember from HSL. And people will say Hawaii Sign Language is not a language, not a real language. And so but then other people are very fascinated when you go to the mainland and they'll say, what language is that? Oh, I'm from Hawaii. And so it's very different. So people had told me that you, Linda, have two very different languages. And I thought, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I didn't even know I grew up bilingual. But now in my 60s, having done all this research, then now I know. And I am documenting all of this information to be saved and revered. And it's very unique because of the linguistics. I talked to James Woodward over he's a very strong linguist with UH, and we have researched HSL and the value that this language has, and we want to preserve it. So I didn't even realize growing up how much HSL was in my heart and how important it was to me until, in my 60s, I started to really, really gain momentum on this project of learning all about it.
Well, I would love to talk with you more about that. And I know that right now we only have 5 minutes left.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Goodness.
And I know all the efforts that you have taken to try to help preserve HSL. And I know there are only about 8 people on Earth who are continuing to speak this. And I would love to talk with you about that and anything that I can do in my role at the university to support those efforts. I would be really delighted to do. So the last thing I wanted to ask you right now, thinking about your role in part of the community of the school, are there any things that being part of the school community has taught you about yourself?
Oh, I mean, yes, no. So I've still been involved with the church or with the school as an alumni. And we've seen so many positives and negatives with how things unfold for people in education, but I really like to focus on the positives. I like to show vlogs of the school, the program. It's wonderful. The sign language is wonderful. I want people to have a good view of the school, and that's really the role I want to take and continue to spread, is that this deaf school needs to be encouraged to flourish rather than to be closed down. Because if we continue to diminish in our population, these students are just going to be farmed out to the mainstream schools, and we're going to lose so much. So I really encourage people to see the school with a positive light and encourage all that they do.
So last thing I was going to ask you, that you've been part of the school for so long, and there have been good parts of it and bad parts of it. How is it still alive in you? How is the school still alive in you?
Really, if I was younger, I would really want to be a teacher there. I would love to teach HSL and Hawaiian history. That's really how it is in my heart. But having an opportunity to teach and document the language and different ways that we have been successful here and the different people that have made an impact is really how it's still alive in me.
Thank you.